Hello YouTube, this is Asatsu5 and you ought to know that by now because if you're a subscriber you've seen my videos before. But for you new guys, this is Asatsu5. I film knife and gear reviews, and today I'm going to be talking about balisongs, butterfly knives, batangas knives, 29, which are all terms for the same knife. Also, I forgot a terminology, fan knives. These are those knives. And just to show, the new one that I'm reviewing is the one in the middle. The other ones, these are both Filipino handmade knives. I got them from the same website. This one I got several years ago, completely custom made, my design. I love it. This one is a Benchmade 42. A Benchmade 42 that is in very rough shape, and I couldn't get the money I want for it if I tried to sell it, so I'm using it as a trainer. It is, it's a discontinued vintage knife, but it's in rough shape. I've dropped it several times in the course of learning how to manipulate butterfly knives. This one in the middle is different because it is a 29. And 29 refers to the size of the knife when open. 29, I can't decide. I could probably look this up on Google Translate, but I didn't. I don't know if it's technically a Filipino term or a Spanish term. Veinte and nueve are Spanish. It's weird. In the Philippines, they have their own kind of language. I think it's called Tagalog or something, but they count in Spanish and they say other words in Spanish. It's like a mixture. I guess you can describe it kind of like America. We borrow words from all different languages and mix them together, and that's the American language. So it's different than some of the Canadian English and the English or British English or Scottish English or Irish English, those different slang terms and stuff, but it's kind of related because they're mixing the two languages together. So 20 is Spanish for 20, 9, 29. And if you've seen Cutlery Level's video on the Way of the Balisong promotion, where you can buy a patch or a hoodie, it says 29 on it. It has a picture of a balisong that says 29. You often see on Blade HQ or sometimes on YouTube people who have 29 knives, custom knife. There's a like a custom balisong company, I forget who owns it, and his brand is 29 Knives. That's his brand that he calls his balisongs. And he has all kinds of shapes and blade shapes and stuff. They're very beautiful, but they are very expensive. So I probably won't get one. But the story behind 29, I don't know all the details because I read it in the book, Jeff Amida's Beginning Balisong book. I also read kind of a synopsis of it on Wikipedia. I have a kind of an understanding of what the legend is, but I don't know the details. But pretty much, there was this guy. He's a Filipino martial artist, I believe, and he liked butterfly knives, which a lot of people in the Philippines do like the butterfly knife. And there was a time period in the Philippines where it was very dangerous. It was ran by gangs and muggles and robbers and stuff. It was just not a safe place to live at, especially in Manila, and I guess Batangas and other places as well. It was just a rough place to live. So he carried a balisong. I don't know if it was literally 29 centimeters, but the story goes he defeated 29 people with his balisong. 29 people attacked him, and he either stabbed, cut, killed all of them. I don't know which one, like if he cut a few and they ran off, or if he stabbed a few and they ran off. I don't know if he actually killed all of them outright, but he took on 29 people, and with his balisong, and that's where the legend comes from. So people thought it was such a cool story that this man did this. They started making butterfly knives in 29 centimeters overall length. So the number 29 is very significant to the balisong. And I wish I knew more details about it, kind of like how Jim Bowie, we know a good bit of the details of what happened to him in the sandball fight. We don't know everything, but we have names of people and stuff and dates, but we don't know as much about this situation with the 29 or 29. So, you know, we have that. If you don't know, a big difference between Filipino handmade balisongs and these modern USA made balisongs. The Filipino handmade ones come to you very, very stiff. They won't flip out of the box. You have to break them in. You have to squeeze a little, not squeeze, but shoot a little bit of WD-40 in them. Get the knife. This one's locked, and you have to walk it in, walk it loose, and make sure that it's flowing very easily. This one is about perfect. It's not as it doesn't swing as good as a Benchmade 42, but it's pretty dang close. And I can do a lot of things with this that I can do with that. Not necessarily everything, but a lot of things. This one still has some time to break in. As you can see, it's just, you know, not free flowing yet. I can still technically flip it. It just took a few hours to get it where I can do that. You know, WD-40, a rag or a bandana to wipe away. You see that? That's metal particles. So while friction is rubbing against the blade and the handle, so you get these black smudges. It's good to wipe that off and then continue walking it in, getting it real nice and smooth. And so you have that issue with the Filipino handmade balisongs. And when I say Filipino handmade, these are handcrafted, sometimes by individuals, sometimes by whole villages. Like the village will have different parts in the manufacturer. One guy will hand forge the blade out of 5160 spring steel. They get theirs from vehicle leaf springs. One person will cut to shape the handle scales. One person will make the actual handles. One guy will assemble it. One guy will heat treat it. You know, the different steps are sometimes carried out by different family members or different families. Sometimes it's made by a single individual. Also, an issue that you have with these knives, those two issues that you have with these knives that are not very cool, but you can learn to live with it, is that one, they don't come to you very, very sharp. They will cut. You can still cut with them, but they're not that sharp. And part of the problem is, this is the edge. When you fold the edge in the knife and you're flipping it, those certain parts of the edge are actually hitting that inner channel. You hear that sound? That's the edge hitting the inside channel. Now, I've heard of some people, I haven't tried this, gluing felt or gluing leather in there to cushion it. I haven't done that, but these knives will dull if you flip them. If you open it really fast and do your stuff and then kind of softly open it, it might not be that big of an issue. But if you're doing the stuff that us Bally fans like to do, it's going to flip it. I mean, it's going to dull it. Also, I don't know if you'll be able to see this. This knife still cuts, but let's see if they'll focus. You can see that it looks like the tip might be, it's a little discolored. I don't know if they didn't polish it off from the heat treat process. I don't know if they burnt the metal. You can see some discoloration there. Right there on the very edge, just a little bit discolored. So I don't know. And also, that's a little bit uneven. But It's really cool watching the people make these knives. They're using it with minimal power tools. They do have power tools, but they're generally handmade. But they're on this knife where it's buffalo horn and wood, it's almost seamless. The only thing I really feel when I run my finger across all the surfaces is the pins. This one is a little bit different because you have jig bone and wood. I will tell you this: if you get a Filipino handmade balisong, I would stay away from the jig bone. I think it looks pretty cool, but after flipping it, which this knife don't flip perfectly, it's not my preference. It's not irritating my skin to the point where it's being rubbed raw or it's starting to get sensitive, but it's just not as comfortable as a smooth balisong. A smooth balisong, when you flip a balisong, you're all over the handle. You're constantly coming up and down the handle, catching it at different locations. It's spinning. It's a very dynamic hobby and action that you're doing. So I find a smoother balisong is actually more comfortable to flip. And if you think about it, you think about the modern balisongs that you see, the Benchmades, the Bradley Kimuras, the who else makes production balisongs? CCCs from China, Son. Well, I haven't flipped a Son, so I can't really speak on that. I'm just judging by looks. But a lot of balisongs that get into the country that are not traditional Filipino handmade and don't have the bone on them, they're very, very smooth. Just like this one. This one is very, very smooth. The only traction plan it has is these very polished holes they drilled into it. But generally, it's pretty smooth. It's not something that you generally get very sharp edges on them because flippers don't really want that. I do have a 51 that needs to be repaired, and the 51 is relatively smooth as well. It has carbon fiber on it. Anyways, you're probably thinking to myself, why buy a Filipino handmade? When the US made ones are so much better. You can flip them, you can EDC carry them, and you can flip them without them getting really, really dull. And I don't really have a good argument for that. Technically speaking, the Benchmades and the custom balisongs that you see for over $200, they're generally better than these. What I like about these is I like the aesthetics of them. I like how they look. I love how they sound when you flip them. To me, this sounds a lot better than the 42. And I'll give you a little demonstration of that. You won't be able to see me flip, but I'm going to do some horizontals with this knife, then I'm going to do horizontals with that knife, and I'm just going to let you hear the difference. And I don't know how well my audio is going to pick it up, but I generally love the sound of these more than the titanium stainless steel ones. It's more of a clacking sound. Here is the Benchmade, and I'm holding it at the same location relative to the camera where I can flip it semi-close to the camera, but it's not so close I'm going to hit something. Try this one out. So you can hear that there's a difference. There was a sound difference, and that's a personal preference thing. But I like the way these sound. I like the way they look. To me, they have a better story behind them when you take them out and you EDC them, and people ask about it. It's like, hey, that's a butterfly knife. It's like, yeah, and they're like, well, I never seen one like that before. You can say, yeah, it was handmade in the Philippines. A man literally forged it to shape, ground it, made the handles and all that stuff, and they saw every step of the production of the knife with no automated tools. They're handmade. And so they kind of have a story behind them. You can say this is the Philippines. They made the butterfly knife famous. And also, I kind of like to support this dying craft of balisong making. It's a lot of the younger kids don't want to get into forging and making balisongs because there's not a whole lot of money in it. And I'd hate to see the art of these handmade balisong knives, go extinct or disappear. You can EDC these. I actually have a pocket clip on this one that says Philippines. I love the pocket clip. And you can EDC them. They can cut. They do get dull when you flip them, and you flip them closed. My brother actually kind of reground this one to give it a better edge. And eventually, after sharpening it for X amount of time, you're probably going to get to a point where you raise this up enough where it won't touch the inner channel. Who knows how long that would take. But since I can legally carry balisongs, I prefer to carry something from that's homemade, has that warm wood feeling. It's not as, this ain't like hot or anything, but it's not as cold as titanium or stainless steel. It's very pretty, rustic looking. Same thing with this one. I will mention this. Let me see if I can close this. The fits on the latch, by the way, these are Batangas latches, not Manila latches, but this one actually retains very, very easily, has a good detent on it, it fits well. You see I flipped it up with my thumb and it flipped open. This one, it doesn't fit as tightly, and you can see that it doesn't just pop open and flip to the other side. So that can be an issue to some. This one is broken in a whole lot more than this one. This one's relatively new. I've had it for a few weeks. This one I've had for several years, but this one actually came from the factory fitting really, really tight. And something else worth mentioning, when you're flipping Filipino handmades, they don't have a latch gate. They don't have a spring or a latch gate to keep this latch from hitting the blade, which is not cool. You don't want the latch to hit the blade, but keep in mind that the latch is made from brass, and you can see where it's hit. Let's see if it'll zoom in. You can see where it's hit the blade, and it deformed the brass, so it's not going to. It shouldn't chip the blade that much. It's not like it's hitting steel on steel or anything, but it's still. That's something you need to know before buying a Filipino handmade. I will tell you this: if you want a balisong relatively cheaply, that Filipino handmades are probably a very good way to go. Are they as cheap as CCCs? And for those of you who don't know what CCC stands for, or CC for short, is cheap Chinese, or cheap Chinese balisong, or charming cheap Chinese balisong. So basically, there are Chinese-made balisongs that are very, very cheaply made. And I've had, like, let's just say this is a CCC. I've had it break right here where they drilled the holes and stuff, and when I flipped it, it flew across the room. And that CCCs are what a lot of people get started flipping, but they are potentially dangerous. So far, I haven't had any issues with the Filipino handmades, and they are more affordable than the Benchmades and stuff. They cost, this one cost $115. This custom one was $105, although they don't do custom orders anymore. I will say this: the website you go onto to buy the knives is balisong.com, and buying these knives is kind of a headache. Far as you have to go through Western Union to transfer your money from your bank to the Filipino bank and convert the money from US to pesos. And when you do that late at night, people get suspicious. So they'll give you a phone call and ask you if you're being blackmailed and stuff. And I got a funny story to tell about that. But it is a little bit more difficult to buy. I'll also say this. This was not the original Venti Nueve that I bought. I bought another one that had a bottle opener on it. And it never came to me. I waited almost a month. It didn't come. And I emailed them back. I said, hey, I ordered this knife in September. It's now getting close to the end of October, and I haven't seen my knife. And they were like, well, it probably got lost in the mail. And they said, pick a knife of equal value, and we'll send it to you. And this is the one I picked, and they sent it to me. So the customer service is really good. So I really appreciate that. Anything else to mention? It's balisong.com. They have a pretty big variety of double edge, single edge. They have Weehawk blades. They have the Rambo type balisong. They have balisongs with bottle openers on them. They have Damascus balisongs. They have a pretty good selection depending when you check, because you can only forge so many balisongs at a time. But they have a good variety of balisongs on balisong.com. So I feel comfortable recommending them to you because I've bought 2 knives from them, and they've treated me good so far. So that's it. Just keep in mind that these don't flip as well as these out of the box, although this one can do almost everything this one can do, but not all. These are sandwich construction. And they'll pinned. These do get dull when you flip them closed. They do come relatively dull out of the box. They can still cut, but you're going to have to use a sawing motion. You can regrind them if you have the skill, or you can give them to someone who has the skill to regrind them. But I guess what I'm saying is they're not better than a Benchmade, but I like them better because I'm kind of a nostalgic guy, and I like the feel and the sound of these. And I like supporting people who are working very, very hard to make a product, almost with no modern convenience whatsoever. So I like supporting them. I like these knives. I want to go to the Philippines and buy one in person. But that's the review. This one I think is 24 centimeters overall, 29 centimeters. Can't remember what this one is, but I made this one to be similar in size to this one, but they're not. They're not the exact same size. So that's it. I hope y'all have a great day. I'm a Satsu 5, and I'm out.